Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're all having a great day. Welcome to another episode of Turtly Wild. Today we're going to be talking about some cool stuff, like literally. Talking about dormancy and how temperature, climate, availability of food can change behavior in reptiles. Basically, what we want to start off with is let's break it down into what are the different types of dormancy. Most familiar, most people are going to say hibernation. Yes, form of dormancy. Hibernation, brumation, estivation. Those are the three we're really going to talk about. And basically break them up, try to figure out which one is which and what do each one of them entail. Alright, so this little forestans here, it's 82 degrees here in the greenhouse. It's not going to go into hibernation or brumation, I can tell you that. And they're out eating in the middle of winter, even though it's kind of chilly out here in northern Georgia today. Same thing for this Burmese mountain tortoise. It's active, it's eating, it's not going down. It's going to stay active throughout the year. Now, let's break down hibernation and brumation. Depending on how specific you want to get, turtles don't hibernate. They brumate. Right? Let's break that down into differences. Hibernation is typically reserved for mammals. Even though hibernation and brumation typically say the same thing. Hibernating mammals, they're going to go into a state of torpor, which means their metabolism is going to be much lower than the normothermic metabolism. In other words, their normal body temperature, right? Mammals typically have some body temperature between like 35, 32, and 42 degrees Celsius. But when they go into hibernation, true hibernation, now we could get a whole topic on hibernation because there's different types of hibernation, how long they stay in hibernation, and whatnot. But for hibernation, all intent and purposes, the behavior in which mammals conserve energy to make it through the winter. Right, in the winter, there's not a lot of food available, so you're going to go and waste all your energy running around looking for food, and there's none available, or not much. So why not just shut down and chill out? So that's what happens. Mammals, they go down for the winter, they hibernate, their metabolism drops. It can be less than 1% of normal metabolic rates. Their body temperature also drops. That's a unique thing about hibernation. We think of mammals as always needing a constant temperature in their bodies, but when they go into hibernation, they do not. They're actually small animals that can tolerate -3 degrees C in their body. So they can actually tolerate sub-freezing temperatures in their body, even though in normal times, when they're not hibernating, their body temperature will be in the 90s, or I should say between 35 and 42 degrees Celsius. So that's pretty amazing that these homeothermic animals can handle that. Now, for turtles, you have what's called brumation. That's what we leave for turtles. And it's different, but it's the same. It's different but the same. Yes, turtles lower their metabolic rate to, yes, less than 1% of normal metabolic rates. Their temperature drops. Their heartbeat, I also didn't mention that, but for mammals, the heart rate drops to a fraction, to 1% of what it might have been before. Same thing with turtles. In turtles, the temperature drops, heart rate drops, metabolism drops, just like in mammals. The big difference is, in turtles and other reptiles, they don't have the ability to have internal mechanisms heat up their body temperature if it gets too cold. Right? So if a turtle is exposed to extremely cold weather, sub-freezing temperatures, they could freeze to death and die and not make it out of the winter. Whereas a mammal, if it gets really cold outside, 15, 20 degrees below zero, then they can kick on internal mechanisms and use that fat they've stored because they've gorged themselves on food. They can actually raise the temperature of their body even during hibernation. So if it's getting too cold, they can kick on those internal heating mechanisms. Metabolic rate kicks up. Yes, they're using more energy, but it's better than the alternative of dying. And they can keep their body temperature above the outside ambient temperature when it's too cold. Reptiles cannot. Also, mammals, when they come out of hibernation, when it's time to come out, they kick on those internal mechanisms and their body goes back to a normal thermic temperature. So 35 to 42 degrees C, somewhere around in there, depending on the species. Reptiles cannot. Turtles cannot. They come out, maybe they come out mid-March and it's 65, 70 degrees. That's going to be their temperature. They might not get to that optimum temperature that they like, but it's warm enough they can get out, move around, and exercise, or look for food, not exercise. And she is coming after me. You saw her trying to dig a mound over there. This is her mound. She's telling me, get away from it. This is the mound she builds. And she likes to build this mound and then climb over and then get in with the elongateds on the other side over there. All right, so that's the difference between hibernation and brumation. They're very similar, and I use that word interchangeably. Everybody says the turtles hibernate. It's close enough. I mean, it's basically the same thing. There's a few minor differences, but basically it's hibernation. But technically the term is, for reptiles, turtles included, is brumation. So basically the same. The difference is mammals can turn on the heat and increase their body temperature when they're ready to come out of hibernation. Mammals can also increase body temperature when it gets too cold so they don't freeze to death. Turtles can't do that, and other reptiles. However, in part two of this episode, we're going to talk about freeze tolerance and supercooling, two methods in which reptiles can't increase their body temperature, but two methods which turtles and other reptiles can use to avoid being frozen when temperatures get below freezing. All right. So I hope you, well actually, I want to show you one more thing. And the ability to hibernate or brumate depends on the species. It also, another form of dormancy is estivation. Estivation occurs typically in the hotter, drier months. So it's really hot and dry. It's really hot and dry, there's not water, other animals aren't moving, plants might be really desiccated. There's not a lot of food, not a lot of water, so why go out and look for stuff? Even in hot temperatures, a turtle can estivate and still lower their metabolic rate. So they've done studies and looked at a turtle at 32 degrees C, or 30 degrees C, when it's estivating, has roughly 30% lower metabolic rates than when it's not estivating and it's active. So even at high temperatures, they can still drop that metabolic rate. Temperature won't really drop, but the metabolic rate will drop, respiratory, heart rate, all that will drop, and they can still conserve energy during the hot and dry parts of the year when it's not ideal to be out and about. And that's the thing with dormancy. It's a strategy used to conserve energy when the climate, the environment is not ideal to survive or eat or whatever it might be. All right, and different species do different things. This one's not going to hibernate. Forstons don't hibernate on Sulawesi, but they could estivate, right? So it just depends on the species, and even within a species, individuals will do different things. I'm going to show you our macords. All right, so we have 6 macords. The ones in this enclosure and this one have slowed down a lot as the day's gotten shorter. Because temperature, length of day can also initiate hibernating responses. But the 4 turtles in these 2 enclosures eat not nearly as much as they did in the summer. They still come out and they'll nibble on some food and then go back in. But their body temperatures, when I scan them with this, have been above 70 always, normally mid-70s. So they're kind of just buried barely in that soil. They're actually typically half exposed as well. However, the little male and the female in that enclosure, they have concrete around a lot of their enclosure, and it's cold. And they're also digging down really deep into the soil that kind of matches the temperature outside a little bit better. So we're going to shoot this 78 degrees on that wood. And then we come over here. This female has been hiding out in here. So there she is. All right, there's the female, and I hit her, and she is 63.6. So she is maintaining a body temperature. Oops, sorry. She's maintaining a body temperature about 15 degrees below what the kind of ground ambient temperature is in this greenhouse. So she and this little male are actually hibernating in this greenhouse. I've recorded her at upper 50s, so 59 degrees C as well for her shell temperature. When it gets really cool, like sub-freezing outside, she's in the 50s. So those 2 have actually decided to hibernate in, or brumate, there I go using that term, in this enclosure even though it's hot. And all the rest of the animals are not brumating. Okay, they're active and eating, even though all of them have slowed down some because the day length has shortened, and that does slow them down. They're still active and eating. 4 of the macords are active and eating, 2 of them are not. Okay, so that's interesting. Variation among species as far as how long they brumate, what triggers their brumation, and even within a species, like these macords, you can have individual variation on how long they're being dormancy or how short. And do they become active when it warms up, to stay down the whole winter. Some species of turtles and other reptiles, when it gets warm, they'll come out on those warm days, sun, maybe look for food, and then go back under. Some, even when it's warm, they'll stay under. So individual variation and species variation. Really cool stuff. I hope you enjoyed today's video. We're going to do part 2 and talk about freeze tolerance and supercooling and the importance of brumation, this dormancy period, to cycle animals so they can breed. All right, I hope you have a good one, and we'll talk to you later.